I mean, I
That's what
remember
you have to do.
9/11 very well. I was supposed to be on a plane that day to LA to go do the LA Art Show, and I'd spent all this money on the booths and all this effort. Yeah, and so we went out, like it was like the 13th or 14th, we had it that weekend of 9/11. And I thought, well, this could be really bad. We may be in deep trouble here because, I've got to recoup all those booth fees. They're 30, 40, 50,000 bucks. I can't remember. It was at least probably about 40 or 50. And I bought a double booth.
Of course you did.
Good timing. Yeah, I want to make a statement. I made a statement. But we still managed to make sales. People supported us, which was wonderful. People came and bought art just because they could see the desperation probably in our eyes, and I sold art for my artists. And
See, that's why I didn't call you.
Yeah. I remember I actually made a painting sale to Michael Blake on a Francis Livingston painting on 9/11, and he just said, "I'm buying this because I want to help you." And I thought, thank God.
And he'll always remember why he bought the painting.
Yeah. No, it was one of those things. Yeah, I remember. I mean, that's the thing as an art dealer or an artist. We have these issues too. And for us, at least, I can't speak for other dealers, but I can for myself. Is we feel a great responsibility for our artists, right? So when they're not making sales, I know they may not be able to. In your case, we had to go and serve food and stuff and pick up food because you couldn't get it. I understand how that is. So we take it very seriously. So if I have a bad show or something like that, it's like I take that to heart, like, oh my God, because they're counting on it, especially when you got frame costs and all this other stuff that goes on.
The framers are the only ones that make the money for sure.
Yeah. Go talk to them during the pandemic. I think they had their fun times too when they couldn't get material.
We were still painting. We still needed frames. We just didn't know where to.
They couldn't get their stuff. The supply chain shut them all down.
Well, that's true.
So they had their. We all have our things when it happens.
Oh,
but
nobody has it made in this world.
No, I don't think so. So you were in Sedona. You moved there like 81, and you've been there the whole time, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, how has that city changed? I mean, I see it. Yeah. For those who are not watching this, her mouth went down, like in the sadness, because it has changed dramatically. It's still a beautiful area. It'll always be beautiful, but you finished the butt part for me.
Well, again, we thought it might be a jumping off place to something more exotic.
Yeah.
But it's just been such, a pleasant place that doesn't interfere with your life much and lets you be an artist and do what you did. But it used to be more so that way. When I moved there, we just had an election, and about 3 of the people running for mayor and city council had been there less than a year and a half, some less than a year.
Yeah, so
they go, we're going to restore Sedona to what it was. We're going to give you back Sedona. And I go, honey, you have no idea. I rode my horse to the bank and the post office.
Yeah.
There were 3 art supply stores. If one didn't have it, the other 2
How
did.
many art supply stores do they have now? Do you know?
Oh, none.
0.
There was even one in Cottonwood, and that left too, which is more of a bedroom community. So that I would have thought that was the first to go. But an artist had it, and she kept it going as long as she possibly could till her husband got sick. And you'd bump elbows with Joe Beeler and Frank McCarthy. You'd be out horse riding and run into Joe Beeler.
It's a small town. It was a small town with a small town feel.
With an absolute Western art feel. All Hughesburg's gallery did, he put in a 2-page ad in Southwest Art every month, and it just had a picture of Airport Mesa with the call letters to when you landed to come to his gallery. This is how you got hold of him.
Right.
To have him pick you up and take you into town so you could do art shopping.
Right.
And that's what our town was. And now it's just changed so much. I'm still in a gallery there, but our clientele has changed tremendously. Mountain bikers are not the biggest art buyers.
No, I'm sure not.
And the little street where I bought my studio, I thought, I'm going to put bars on the window. This is real low end of Sedona.
Right.
And it's turned out I've made so many great friends, and it's just the sweetest little neighborhood, and people, they're private because the houses are so close. You have to be private and not know everybody's business, but you're there if they need you. It's just really a sweet place to spend the day. And when that law changed that everyone could rent out a room in their house to help make the mortgage payments,
Yeah.
everyone sold their house or moved out and turned it into a multi-room Airbnb.
Right.
And half our street are Airbnbers, and the people don't understand Sedona. They don't understand our little neighborhood or the streets. They're backing over the gas meters. Then they have to quarantine the street and shut it down with fire trucks. You can't get to your house, and your dog's trapped there, and you can't get to it to let it out because they think there's a major gas leak. And they knock over everybody's mailbox, backing out of a driveway across the little 20-some foot road. Boom! Someone's mailbox is in the ditch very regularly. Some people had a big bonfire in the backyard and almost burned all the trees down on that side of the street. And in so many ways, Sedona has changed. I used to tell everybody you should think about moving to Sedona.
Yeah.
And if anybody asks us now, we go,
yes,
maybe again later, but don't come now.
Too many tourists.
Which is great for the art gallery. You would think, but they're not high-end buyers.
Right.
They're not looking to spend thousands on anything.
Yeah. Curios.
And you can do it
Crystals.
cheaply. You can go to the grocery store, and hang out for a week and never spend a dime in town, but the traffic is horrendous. And no, you wouldn't ride your horse anywhere near town anymore if one still had a horse.
Have you ever thought about, okay, maybe it's time for me to go to Cottonwood or somewhere else?
Well, you look up at those red rocks if you don't look up and then rear end somebody because traffic's so bad. But you look up at those, they've been there forever. They're going to be there forever. And there's a sense of peace and place about it there. And, George sometimes says, maybe we should just get out of Sedona. Every nice place now, if you have a computer and a cell phone, you can live anywhere, even if you're still working and running a business.
Right.
And people just travel and travel. I don't know how they can afford to do it, but they're everywhere and they own multiple homes in all these places. And I think every nice place has been touched by the same thing. But, we've got our doctors,
places.
Our dentists.
Yeah.
I don't know where you'd go, at our age and start over. And
Tucson.
We're losing friends as we age. We lose some friends either for a bad reason or because they move to be with their kids and grandkids or something. And we don't have time or energy to make a lot of new friends. And I think if you were to move to a place, George has always loved Durango, and he turned me on to Durango, and I like that. But if we were to move there, I think probably a lot of those people have their little circle of friends, and that's all they have time and energy for. And I don't think we would have that sense of community that we would expect everyone to welcome us with open arms when we showed up there, because I know we're not doing it to people, not for a inhumane reason. You keep your little circle and draw it tighter, and it gets smaller. So to go start somewhere all new, it would be a big adventure, but I don't know if it would work out the way.
Plus, you got
you
those
think
red
it's going
rocks.
to.
Yeah, those red rocks are pretty compelling.
And in 5 minutes, well, I've said this for 40 years now. In 5 minutes, you can be outside of town and hike or horseback ride or go out with your dog and not see anyone. Well, now there's people camped all around Sedona. There's whole communities that have sprung out there, and they started renting these off-road vehicles. Every building that's come available, instead of putting in a little gallery or a boutique now, which Sedona was full of.
They rent the little
and they're all lined up
tricycle
along the
things,
highway with the flags waving, and it's really ugly. And they're going down the road.
Loud.
They go right by our deck, and the noise is so awful. Sometimes we just, especially on weekends or a 3-day weekend, we have to just go in the house and close the windows because you can't have a conversation. And then they go out and they're literally tearing up the fragile ecosystem out there that we have always been taught to protect. They're doing donuts through the sagebrush and the cactus, and they've killed the trees and torn up animal nests. And the Forest Service even says, it's not against the law. There's nothing we can do about it. And we're going, there ought to be a law. So I don't know where it's going to end. Hopefully someone will get their sanity back, and they'll they'll save it before it's ruined. But a lot of people have told my gallery, they've gal up the street works in some galleries and gift shops part-time. People have told her, they said, this place is a circus. We won't be back till you straighten it out. And I mean, Sedona was like the art capital of the West. It was fabulous.
And this was brought to you by visitsedona.com.
Yeah, I'm telling you, right now, don't come.
They don't want any more people.
And you won't have fun. You'll just be stuck in a 3-mile long traffic jam.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed when I've gone there is that the traffic to get in and out is just, and I don't know the area well enough to avoid it, unfortunately. But,
well, we don't have alternative roads.
Yeah.
When I moved in, they had just put in the 4-lane road, and that was a big deal. The main highway had become 4 lanes. But the other big deal was the spring before Red Rock Crossing. I have real mixed feeling. We need to be able to make a circle around Sedona, and you can't without going 100 miles out of your way. But there was a road that went right through Red Rock Crossing, right through Oak Creek, under the iconic rock that John Wayne did all his famous movie scenes under. A road went right through there, and then you got out into the water, and you were in the village of Oak Creek. And they've been back and forth for over 40 years whether to restore that road. And I think it would be a shame. There has to be someplace a few feet down where they could put another road through. But on the other hand, it's a fire hazard. There's no escape routes from Sedona. There is no alternative way to get into Sedona. There just isn't. It's kind of scary if you think about it during fire season. But
and you can go visit places up on the Navajo reservation that look like Sedona that have no people.
That's true. And Utah has some beautiful red rock country.
Yeah, they do. Kanab in that area. Yep.
I guess maybe I'm living in the past. I'm picturing the art supply stores and the galleries.
Yeah, it's hard. And your horses, right? You can get on your horse and go.
We don't have that.
And things do change. Santa Fe changes. Tucson changes. You know, the road where we sit right now, I remember when it was desert. And I remember when they bladed it.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, and I was very upset that they were blading this land. And now here I sit with my gallery on this, right as we see. So things do change.
Well, you either adapt and change with it and take take of the new opportunities, or you're just really mad and you go out and be Ted Krasinski or something, blow things up because you're that angry. Live in a cabin with no water.
So I do have a question about your art, moving back to the art thing. So you do a lot of the things that you do are pottery. I would say that's true. At least maybe that's what I get. Maybe I get it because, I have lots of pottery and beadwork. But there's an essence to each of the pots that I find really interesting in that you'll take a pot and give it patination by putting cracks or chips or things like that on it.
I do take a little artistic. As I get older, I realize the cracks and chips are the story of your life. Yeah. When it's new and pristine, it has no history yet. And I love history. So, yes.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, because some of the pots are pots that we've had and you've used images of it. We love you to do it. And, I've sold pots that are pictures of your pots as well together. But how did you get on that thematic of pottery, especially because you do them so adroitly?
I was doing them back in California. That's over 41 years ago. Yeah. Well, I used to go to, there were a couple of museums there that had a lot of pottery. Southwest Museum and a little museum in Santa Ana. Mm-hmm. And again, I was relegated to doing still life. And that was the easiest thing to find was pottery. And I think people can relate to pottery. We understand it. We kind of know what it is. The education is in who made it and how and why and what those designs mean. But it was readily available. And I was doing them in watercolor. And people loved them because they weren't intrusive. They weren't like hair and bone and skull fragments and hooves and things. They were easy to live with, and people loved them. So it was semi-commercial, but the more I learned about the pottery and the different tribes and pueblos and how they came to be in the different ages, then we got to Arizona where you could actually go out and there was pottery laying there, or you could dig it up, or I shouldn't say that. Or there were shards laying around up at Hopi. I think it's at Old Arriby. There's Sikyatki pottery shards laying on top of the ground.
Yep.
And
everywhere.
We could climb up to cliff dwellings from Bash's Market. You can look up and see a cliff dwelling above the grocery store.
Yes.
And that really opened my eyes.
It inspired you to go, okay,
oh, yeah.
I'm here at Hopi and I can see these. I want to go to museums, learn about this pottery that I see on the ground, and take it from there.
And then the prehistoric really opened up when I got here.
Yeah.
And being able to go to Canyon de Chelly, being able to go to Hopi.
Yeah, and on the prehistoric, you can, since it's really not an easy thing to own because of all the laws and regulations, but there's no reason you can't have a great painting that illustrates something that was done 1,200 years ago. That's in in one of the museums. Yeah,
mm-hmm. And look at it and see a fingerprint in it.
Yeah,
and imagine the person that put it there, and you get to touch that fingerprint. And I try to put that in the painting where you can almost touch it in the painting. But I do paint a lot of things and real high end pottery that maybe no one. Well, when I lived in California, we started collecting pottery, but we were an earthquake country. And I thought, this is really a dumb idea. So some people don't feel they're in a position where the cleaning lady might knock it off the shelf, and there goes your investment. So it's a way to own some really beautiful pieces of art made by the people who we inherited the country from and through, without having to own the piece.
Yes.
And be able to enjoy it almost as much.
And you'll do other things. I think one of my, I know what it was. You did a painting of Maynard Dixon's kind of red gateway behind there. We have that painting, actually. And I just love it when you do those other images of, I've seen you do Frederick Remington paintings on the thing, and they're really good. I've
done N.C. Wyatt.
Yeah.
Hopefully people that aren't, and maybe they're long gone enough, they won't be upset that I've used it. I've even done some contemporary artist work, but I ask permission first, which is sometimes granted, sometimes not, and then I don't do it. But it tells a story. It really ties in. Someone said once, can you do a portrait? I said, no, I don't do portraits. And my partner reminded me, you do portraits every time you put a vintage photo behind it, or someone else's painting of a gal. I've used a George Molnar painting of a Navajo girl. And he said, you do portraits all the time. I guess I do, just in a
So did you do the portrait or not?
Mm-hmm.
You did do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
they said it was okay, kind of like, I'm not sure what you're going to do with this. Yeah. And I thought, okay, this is a little touchier with contemporary painters. So I don't think I've asked a lot of people since. But I love the vintage things that I want to tell a story without doing cowboys and Indians and teepees and horses. I want that story to still be evident, so I can include a painting or an old photograph of that happening in the background behind the object. So the objects are the detriment left behind by the people doing those things. So it was a little different take, and there's a lot of people doing it now and doing it really well, really beautifully. So
that's funny. I mean, you were doing this before any of these other people, and Polson, who's terrific, he gets these just amazing amounts of money for his work. He's really great. But I mean, I look at your work and I see the same kind of, things that are that same sense of originality, I'll say.
Well, and they were original because no one was doing it. Now, I try not to look at it. I love Kyle's work, and I try not to look at it because I'm real influenced by things that I love.
I'm sure it'd be very hard.
That really turn me on, and I think I could do that. No, you need to do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I know artists that spend a couple hours a day looking at other artists' work every morning with their first cup of coffee. I'm thinking, I don't dare do that. I'm too susceptible. If you had an accent, I would be speaking to you in your accent right now. I'm that much of a chameleon that I fit into my surroundings, and I don't want to do that. And I've even done paintings and showed up at a show, and another artist had all the same elements in almost an identical size and shape painting. And I had no idea that's what they were doing.
Well, comics do that. A lot of comics will stay away from other comics. They don't want to hear it because they just will absorb it, and they don't even know that they're doing it, but they're taking a riff on that same kind of subject matter, and it's really easy to do.
That's writers a good word. We're absorbent.
Yeah, and the same for writers who write, songs and things, they have to be careful. Even myself, I try to be careful about that. Either in when I'm writing, I don't want it to use anybody else's stuff, so I try to avoid reading things that might influence me. Or when I do podcasts, I don't like to, like, if you had a podcast out there, I wouldn't go listen to it because I don't want to know, because I'm afraid it might influence me, how the story might go when I'm interviewing you, and I want it to be my take, not anybody else's. Again, it would be something that would be subconsciously, I would be doing it and couldn't help it. So yeah, I was like, I stay away from those. And there's some great podcasts out on artists, but it's like, no, I don't want to hear them.
Well,
I'll listen to them afterwards. Yeah. And sometimes I've done that and go, oh, wow, that was really good that they talked about that. I didn't talk about that. Or they talked about the similar things. But
when I first met you, you asked me if I was copying someone or patterned myself after someone. And I said, I was doing it 15 or 20 years before I ever heard of them.
Yeah.
And luckily you believed me.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, because you could have gone in the back room and gone, I don't believe her. I don't trust her.
No, but, I believed it. It was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Somehow I came up with that. Not that we haven't all looked at artists that came before us.
Right.
And I've tried to being absorbent. I've tried to absorb the best of things I've been exposed to. That's why it's really hard for me to sometimes show up at like a mall art show or something, where there might be some really good people getting started, but there's also some people that think they're great and they're having fun. And I started out that way, and that's fine. But if I see a lot of bad things, I absorb that. And that's why I don't listen to a lot of news if I can avoid it.
Yeah, that's good.
There's just, I take on, like I said, I'm a kind of a chameleon. I take on what's around me, and I can get real depressed. I can get real blue. I can feel that my aesthetic level is dropping. That's when you need to go to a great gallery or a museum, or maybe go online, but not look at what your friends are
You're sensitive.
doing.
You're very sensitive to your environment.
I guess.
Yeah, which most artists are. All artists, I think, are probably
That's
very
where we get
sensitive.
our feelings hurt.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's where you bring the emotion. Because your still lifes aren't just, oh, that's a pretty pot. No, there's a story that you can see in the pots. Whether it's how there's a piece you have that's, I think, a Zuni pot, and you've got a chip in it, and the pot piece is down on the bottom right next to it. There's a story right there. You can make it what you want it to make, but there's a story.
That's another of my life lessons that I've learned, is nothing is ever lost. God knows where everything is and where everybody is. And that piece is there. It might not be exactly where it belonged or where you expected it to be, but it's not lost. And you often come across it later and go, oh,
yeah,
I need it even more now than I did then. That's a much bigger scale than just a pot. But I think that's one reason I put those little pieces in, and that it doesn't diminish. It's all still there.
Yeah, that's the creative process that you're doing, for sure. And after doing this for 45, 50 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, as an artist, yeah, I know.
At first I go, no. Oh, wait, yes.
Yep, it is. That you've developed that skill set, and, it shows. It shows in your work. It really does. Yeah, I'll go by it, because we have this whole wall that's just kind of you, right? It's dedicated to you. And I just go by there sometimes and just go, oh yeah, look how good that is. Oh, that's a great Nampeyo pot. It's just, she got it. I know that pot. I've seen that pot. Yeah.
Well, and I send you some really good pieces. So when I'm just about burnout, and then I come down here and I look at all my work together, as soon as it's done, it goes somewhere. It's supposed to be somewhere. Right. And I don't get to see my work, the best pieces, all together at once. Right. And when I come to the gallery and I look and I think, okay, I think I've got it. I think I can do this. Sometimes in my studio I have filled with, I think that's every artist. These are my children.
Yeah, of course.
And they're out in the world. And if I go to see them and they've let themselves go and they're scruffier looking than I remembered them, I would not be happy. But when I go and see that they look pretty good and they've done well for themselves, that's my mother instinct, is that they'll find a good home, because they're good people. They're going to find the right
And I'm
spot.
sure a lot of times you can look at that painting and you remember those moments that you were painting it. Like, oh,
I can
this.
remember the music I was
Yeah.
listening to, or the terrible news story, and I have to turn that off. And
Right.
it's like a what do they call
It's
it?
a snapshot in time, is
When
what
you're
it
in
is.
a sensory thing that's all around,
Yes.
ultra sensory, or like they're doing the Van Gogh immersion
Yes.
kind of thing. Everything that's happening right then is going into that painting. What
Yes.
I'm hearing, what I'm
Sure.
thinking, who shows up. When I look at a painting, I do. It's like a little. I think there's a lot more to this time thing than we think. I think there's like these pixel moments that have everything contained.
Yeah, they do in your consciousness. It's all there. It's all put away, whether you can pull it back or not.
And it's in the universe somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jim Muir is somebody that once told me, we were talking about something like this event where I showed up with all the same 5 elements in a painting that another artist had for the same show, and we had no idea what the other one was doing. And he said that these ideas are in the universe for the taking, and one comes to you. And I often have these things come around 4 a.m. I wake up and I see a finished painting that I'd never thought about doing, and I just go to the studio and think, what size does this need to be? But I see it done. I just have to figure out the logistics of how to. You take a white board like this, and a week later, it's something that never existed in time or space. You created it, and now it's out there forever for the whole world to see. That's an awesome responsibility. That's a big deal. So when I have time to let those visions come, I love that. But I always remember Jim saying that they're out there, and if you're calm and you're meditative, they will come to you, or you will grab them. But they're out there for everyone. They're out there for the taking. And another artist might grab the same idea at the same time, and they will render it differently when they get to their studio and pick a size and a shape and what medium they're going to use. But the idea existed there somewhere, and you're just taking advantage of it and bringing it to fruition.
Well, you'll hear potters say, I let the clay tell me what I want to make. Or weavers will say the weaving will let me know what it's going to be. And they don't know when they start off. And
since I got more into Native American sensibilities, that's when I first started hearing that. And that's how some of these paintings
I'm sure
come to be.
And I think part of it is you're ruminating at night. You're waking up at 4 a.m., but what were you doing between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. while your mind was just,
after reading your books?
Yeah, you were just thinking and going, and it was ruminating and whatever. Your subconscious consciousness is working out those things.
It never takes a rest.
Yeah, and you wake up and it's there. You go, how can it be? Well, you've been thinking about it for many, many hours and maybe many days. I used to do that with writing too. I would find that I would wake up and have thought of a whole chapter or whatever, a whole line, and maybe even a whole concept for a book. Yeah, they do. And when I'm really into writing, then the characters actually appear. So they're in the dreams, those characters doing their thing. So I'm sure that's for you. You've been doing this for 50 years, and yeah, I'm sure it's just almost second nature to you. You're conscious.
Well, sometimes it is. Sometimes you think I have a deadline.
Yeah.
And I have no clue. That's why this rodeo theme triggered a whole lot of new ideas for your gallery.
It wasn't the other way, and you go, oh God, there's nothing in the well.
Oh, and it doesn't. There are times when it doesn't come, and you think, have I lost it?
Yeah, right.
Or am I not in touch with God and creation anymore? Or what happened? But you all are the other half of this. And again, my late husband he just didn't want to share what he made with anybody. But I've only gone with galleries that I really knew and trusted, that I felt had real good history. And I've always felt like we were important to you, that we're part of the family, and that you do care about what happens to us. And it allows me to not have to be at a show every week or two, which takes away from your creativity time, when your mind can freewheel and come up with ideas, that it's very worth the price
to
have that time that you need instead of just being a production machine. And I've been out horseback riding after we got cell phones, and the phone will ring. And a gallery will say, we have these people interested in this. If you can tell them a little something about it, or they need a little discount, or they need something to push them. Do you want to speak with them? And so you tell the horse, and you go, let me check my office file and remember the write-up for that painting. Oh, yes. And that's such a privilege, for someone else to be doing all that work while I'm out on the trail somewhere.
It allows your mind to not have to worry about, is there going to be a sale? Do they care? Do they know what they're doing?
And some artists are really good at both ends of the business, and some of us really
most I find are not that good at both ends of the business, honestly. And I think that's a good thing, because as an artist, I think you need that time to create and to do the creation, and business takes away from it,
It's the other side of the brain. I have a cousin who's excellent at both. She's an artist and she's also an author.
Yes.
And she's run everything in a very business-like way, helped run her husband's businesses.
Yes.
And she is like the Renaissance woman. She can do it all.
There are some that can. Aaron Hansen can do it. William Matthews does a fantastic job. There are some that are amazing. But I think it's the rarer of the thing.
Or maybe we just prefer to be in the side that
I think that's part of it.
is going, ooh, what am I going to do
Well,
next?
you live to paint, first of all, or create, whatever that is. And if you have to be doing whatever social media or making phone calls or, trying to sell your material, it takes away from that.
If I have to do a lot of that on a certain particular day, I rarely get in the studio
There you go.
and do anything else unless something in the conversation really triggered something or inspired something. It's just that side of the brain has to cool down now and let the other one resurface. It's like takes a deep dive to get out of the way of what has to be done. It's not when I have to write a bio for myself, or all the write-ups, the narratives I do for the back of the paintings, I think that's still the creative side,
super
though.
creative.
It kicks in, but getting it done and printing them up and chopping the thing, putting it all on the back and stapling it all, that's not a very creative part. But I get real excited about talking about, because my work does almost all go through galleries. I don't meet the people, and I want to tell them why I was passionate about this object that I'm showing them.
Right.
And most of my galleries say, oh, that really helps so much, because they're not necessarily knowledgeable about all of it, and they have no idea why I chose it to paint. So I really think those little narratives help. So that's kind of the icing on the cake. Sometimes I write it before I've done the painting, and sometimes I do it after, and I just really want to try to convey some of that knowledge, like Charles and I talked about, or at least the enthusiasm. And then I always see them when I am in the gallery. If one of the staff shows someone the write-up and reads it and turns it back around, they take a much longer look, because they just got a dose of education.
Right.
Oh, wow. They almost always go, oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not like you're just doing a pretty picture. There's things to compel you, because it takes hours and hours and hours to paint a painting. You don't want to do something that's not going to be compelling, something that has meaning to you. So.
And on the other hand, I've had people walk in and look at a piece, not know what the narrative was, not understand that it was a pipe bag from the late 1880s, but early reservation period, and that it used to carry a strike-a-light for making fires, and now it carries a ration ticket because they're on the reservation, and that's why it's painted. They just look at it and they go, I have to have that. And I go, well, let me tell you what it is. They go, I don't need to know what it is. It's just beautiful and I love it. And you go, whatever. When they get home, they'll read on the back.
I think that's okay too.
So
yeah, I think that's okay too.
Well, hopefully they're pretty enough, and most of them are intriguing enough.
Yeah, something emotionally
that if
clicked
I didn't,
them.
if they didn't know that there's an emotional click in there without having all the knowledge. I try for both. That's a hard job.
What I don't like is if they're there and they put their color swatch up against it.
Does that still happen?
And go, oh, this looks good. Oh yeah, I still do.
One gallery let me go years ago. 10 years later, I was back in. They moved. But he said, where we are right now, he said, I've been selling your work as historical. You know, we're preserving history. We're telling a story. He said, where our gallery is now, He said, everyone walks in with their decorator and the swatch of their drapery fabric. Yeah. And he said, your work is not cutting it in that market. And I went, okay. Well, actually, I didn't go, okay. I burst into tears. He went, this isn't personal. I go, oh, yes, it is. He goes, no, honey, this is business. We'll talk again. And 10 years later, he was back in a different place where people appreciated historical things and, fine tuning of a painting. And we
people will do that.
Did great.
Or they'll come in and look at a textile and they go, oh, I want that blue one. And I'm like, well, that's a classic Satio Serapi. That's, that probably wouldn't work for your floor that you want to do.
Your bedspread, or
and it's 40,000.
That might stop them.
No, sometimes not.
Oh, and sometimes not.
Yeah, I actually told one person, I won't say who it was, but they were a very famous person, and they wanted something like that for their castle on the floor, and I just said, no, this is not a good fit. They were cool with it. They're like, okay, I understand.
They didn't insist.
No, they didn't get upset because I just said it'll destroy the textile. And I just can't do that because this is a very fine early blanket. It's not something that you can just lay down and use as an entrance. So let's find something else.
Well, I talked about my step-grandmother, and she helped launch part of my artifact career. I didn't know all those years. I would always send her my leaning tree cards. She loved to see what I was doing. She finally said, I think I have some things you need to see. And my grandfather had passed away. She said, they're stored in the garage. I'll show you next time you come down. So I went to see her, and she pulled out a 23-inch tall Apache Oya with figures.
A basket.
All over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Not a pottery Oya.
Yep.
And inside were a whole bunch of artifacts. There were dolls and smaller baskets and a piece of pottery. And she had it wrapped in a sheet, all stored in this basket in her garage for years. She said, I never knew anyone that would appreciate it, but I realize you're the person I want to give this to, and gave it all to me and kind of launched my original little collection. And here this was in my family, and I had no idea. Yeah. She was raised on the San Carlos Apache Reservation, part of her life, and these things were given to her mother to thank her for being a good teacher. So they might not have been the biggest collector, although I think that basket is a little valuable. Some of the things were more token things, but here all this was in my family, but also in the family that had come earlier from my probably from my grandmother through my grandfather. They had a lot of, I guess they were called pound rugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, transitional pieces.
Yeah, big, fluffy.
Yep, turn of the century stuff.
Heavy Navajo rugs. And they gave some of them to my parents. Mm-hmm. And my mother, she might have been into South Pacific, but she didn't know what these were. They put them on the patio so that we'd have a soft place to walk.
Yeah.
And, of course, they were all ruined and thrown away. And I was pretty young then, no one realized what they were. So I think I got one that my grandmother had saved from my grandfather dispersing his area rugs or floor mats. But how much stuff has been lost.
That happens.
Really
Still
valuable
happens.
things over time. People just had...
Yep, still happens.
Well, and the Wetherill family dug up Mesa Verde to a pretty big extent before somebody finally went, hey, this stuff all just went to Sweden, and maybe we should keep some.
Yeah, let's keep our heritage. So. All right, so now you've been doing this for 50 years. You've had a lot of experiences. What are there any things you would say to young artists that are maybe kind of starting off, or maybe even somebody who's a second career and they're going to try to start doing an art career? Would you give them is there some advice you would tell them?
Well, there are so many fabulous artists right now coming along, and if there's anything that I hate, it's the cover of a art magazine that says 30 new artists under 30 that you're going to want to collect. I'm thinking, no, not 30 more. So that's terrifying to me. But there are a lot of good artists, but I don't know if this is a field that is going to... I know where young people's heads are right now, and a lot of them are not into buying or collecting what I'm doing and what you're selling. So I don't know if it's a good way to make a living, but my friend's daughter just finished her art education at college and is going to become an animation artist, game designing.
Yes. Right.
And so there's huge ways to use art today that might really make you a lucrative living if that's what you need to do.
Right.
So I would advise that. But for years, I told people that places like Leaning Tree,
Mm-hmm.
they picked me up. No one else was doing much what I did, so they did. One of my images of it was old cowgirl boots, and the verse said, "If only we could be like old boots and look as good as we feel." Or
Mm-hmm.
the older we got, the better we felt.
Right.
And they said, it was your art, but it was also that verse.
Right.
That went all over the world. I've met people in Canada and
Mm-hmm.
from the Far East
Right.
that I've met, and they said, "I have your card. It's a picture." And they alone helped. They were huge and put me on the map. And they give you royalties. And a couple other companies I was with paid royalties. And if you want to be a fine artist, anywhere you can get your work out. There was a company that wanted to put it on like trash cans at Kmart, and I went, "No, I don't think so." But there's a certain degree where getting your art in front of people and you actually getting paid for that,
Right.
I think is great. If your art is good and you're educating people and uplifting their taste, even if they're shopping for a trash can,
Right.
that's helpful. And Leaning Tree, again, it was the golden age of art cards, where that's what people bought them for, the art content, and not necessarily the verse. If you can get anything going for you that'll help stabilize your
Right.
income, that's real helpful. But where the fine art field of doing framed paintings for the walls, I don't know. And I don't know where this computer art thing is going. I've seen some incredible images that I thought, I have visions like that, but I don't know how to do that with paint and a brush.
Right.
But they can create it on a computer screen and
Right.
then print it. I find it fascinating, but I don't know if it's so fascinating it could lessen the market for what we do with just our eye and our hand. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we're going to find out on that. Things like NFTs, which are these digital artwork that's sold. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the ways things are going to head for sure. There's going to be more of that for younger artists that can embrace it. But that I personally don't think fine art is in the sense of painting or sculpting. It's not going away. People love it.
A few years ago, I was worried. I'm not as worried now. One of my galleries wanted to do that with a couple of my pieces, and you're going to get paid in crypto.
Yep.
And after this week especially, I'm thinking, I don't understand this. I don't trust this. I'm not sure this is.
Yeah,
I
maybe
might
not yet.
be too old school for this.
We'll wait till Charles does it. Yeah.
And who knows if we came back in 20 or 50 years, what they'll be doing. But so right now I've gotten by getting, they say age comes with wisdom, except sometimes age comes alone. I'd like to think I'm a lot wiser about a lot of things, but there's things about where the future is going that I don't know if I would give anybody advice.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, it's hard to
I
see
think
the
it's
future.
in free fall.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I think the future is hard to see. What I can take away just from this talk is don't give up your passion. Work hard as you can. And you're going to have to pay some heavy prices occasionally. You may have to lift that tray over your head full of dishes.
And if you're willing to do that, then you know that's where God put you and what you're supposed to be.
That's right.
I think everybody wants to feel that what they've done with their life meant something and left a mark.
Yes.
Whether it's the children you leave behind or a legacy to a college or, whatever it is. I remember reading about a man who was an elevator operator, and he made it the point of his whole life to make everybody, his entire life, his whole career, that got off that elevator feel better than when they got on. And that's huge.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
You think, I'm sure no one gave him, any credit for the career choice that he picked, but what an impact he had. So I just think whatever it is, you need to feel you're in the right place. You're right where you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That might be.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's different for everybody. And for anybody to point fingers and say, you should be doing this or you shouldn't, you have to live your life this way.
I would even say you don't have to think about what your legacy is. I think in some weird ways that's less important. I think it's really do what you're supposed to do, whatever that is, give it your all, and do it the best you can. And the rest will, take it where it's going to go. And you can't predict it. You can't guide it. You can only do what you're supposed to do.
Oh, I think the legacy part comes in retrospect. I
Yeah.
don't think when you're younger, you're going, this is going to change the world. When my life is over, I don't think.
Some artists think that way. I think they think, oh, this, I'm going to be hanging in big museums. People are going to be talking about me. I'm going to be in books. I don't think you can do that as a writer, as an artist, anything. I think you just have to do what you do, what you're compelled to do, and let the chips fall where they fall. Period. I think when Maynard Dixon died, I'm not sure he thought he was going to be that well remembered, other than maybe at BYU and the material that he sold. I think he thought.
Well, you've helped keep his legacy alive, and who you've crossed paths with, and just a chance meeting or someone who's taken an interest in something you did. You read about things that were maybe happened decades ago, and someone says, I heard that somebody did this research or something, and bring it back up, and then it's out there and enriches the world. And you didn't even get to see any of that. And so many artists or writers that thought they left nothing behind.
Sure. Van Gogh.
My hope is that later on we can look down and see that the stream continued and that we enriched it and added some gold to that Sutter's Creek along the way, and that it's not just lost, and what you thought it was when you leave this world isn't all that it ever was. I hope that if it turns into something good, that we get a little enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I think he can't. It's just like the elevator guy, right? I think he probably was a very insightful human being and knew that he was making a difference of whatever it was in his life and other people's. And, you just talked about him, or, that's being remembered, right? He's made an impact, right?
Mm-hmm. So, even bigger, And I never rode on his elevator.
Yeah, you don't need to, because, you appreciate what he did in a lifetime. So,
well, I hope someone's going to write a book about you and Kathleen. I think you two have changed the collecting world from art, artifacts, the education you've imparted, even by reading your books. If no one ever had walked in the gallery and they read your books, they get such a taste and appreciation for the Southwest and the problems and the differences and the stories that can be found out here, unlike anywhere else, and the way you've promoted deceased artists along with the living artists, and there are museums doing that now. That didn't used to be the case, and I just love that. In Desert Caballeros Museum, giving us Cowgirl Up.
Very important.
The new museum in Scottsdale, Spirit of the West, promotes living artists. Museums aren't what they used to be, but you and Kathleen just single-handedly have transformed in a quiet way. You're not out beating your chest and showing up on, the Johnny Carson show or whoever's in charge.
Yeah, definitely won't be on that one. Now, if Joe Rogan called me, Joe, you're listening, I might go on that one. But I think that's retrospective. That happens when it happens. Probably if there's something there to write about or do research later on, I don't need to be around to see it. Honestly, I'll let others make that. I'm just going to do what I do when I.
Well, I don't know if you intended to do it, but you two have really transformed things, and you have always had the best staff around you. They stay for years. I feel like they're part of your family.
They are part of our family. Yeah.
And it's just obviously you're doing something right. The dealers like you, the collectors love you, the artists love you. There's only a couple other people that I can say that about, where they didn't make a lot of enemies along the way on one end of the field or the other, getting to where they were. You all have you're leaving a legacy, whether you ever intended.
Yeah, I definitely didn't intend to, honestly. Yep, just do what I like, what I enjoy getting up and doing every day. Let the art speak for itself. Well,
I've sure enjoyed seeing it firsthand and being a little part of it.
A lot of part of it, for decades, right? That's a long time.
And hopefully we have a few
Yeah,
decades
if you can outlive my
left.
son, you can. He's 30, so he's going to take this to the next level for a long period of time, hopefully.
Well, when I talked to him a few years ago, I said, "Do you plan to step into your
Right.
dad's shoes?" He went, "No, I understand what he does and appreciate it." And he said, "I have all the right training, but I'm probably going to
Yeah.
go off. I have my own path."
Yeah, that's
so
right.
when he reintroduced himself,
Yeah.
I went, "Okay, sounds like your footstep path kind of turned." He said, Yeah, it kind of did.
Yeah,
he
he
said,
wanted
"It's
to do
great.
it.
I'm prepared
Yeah.
for it." But he made the choice.
He did,
You
yeah.
didn't.
No, I didn't. Yeah, it's up to him. It has to be his dream, his life. And when it becomes that and he wants to do it, then I'm ready to embrace it fully. So we're talking about my son, Charles Sublette, who is coming to the business and really is, I think going to make a big impact for the future and the way we see the things, the way we do technology, just the next generation. And that's what we want. And to embrace, he's 30 and he can embrace the next generation of collectors too, and can deal with them and communicate in a different way that maybe I or Kathleen can't. And that's very important because we want contemporary Western art, native arts to really continue to flourish, even, if things may change a bit. And it can, if you have the right tool set. So we've talked way too much about me.
I watched a couple of your podcasts and I thought, you have people laying out their dirty laundry on the table. I thought, that's not it'll be interesting, but we should do that over a beer in the bar. And I thought, this is going to be out there forever. And I don't want to say, did I really say that or tell that?
Yeah, you did.
Story. So there's everybody has some skeletons they're dragging
Of course.
along.
Yeah, it's life, right?
And it does help define our life, but it doesn't have to be the defining moments.
No, that's right. It's it's what makes you
career.
Who you are.
Well,
right?
it is. Yeah.
If you didn't go to the Mojave place and go and do those shows out in the desert, hiding from the wind and rain when it's happening, you're not going to be as tough. You're going to give up along the way, maybe. So it takes those kind of things, I think, that build you to who you are and what you can do. And then appreciate when you make a sale or when you get something done. Then you go, yeah, okay, it was worth the effort, the journey.
I know a lot of artists that it came pretty early. By their 40s, they were top of their game and making a lot of money. And it was almost like, where else is there to go? And I watched several of them who will remain nameless. And they got off into doing their art, took a turn and maybe they'll be famous for that, but it wasn't very appealing. And they lost a lot of collectors and they really didn't care at that point. I guess they were kind of jaded, or they just quit, or they died way too early, from whatever self-induced causes or whatever. I think if you peak too early, it's like fruit or something. If you peak too early, sometimes the flavor at the end isn't quite as savory.
Yeah, that's true. Look at Billy Bob Thornton, the director. I mean, 20 years before Sling Blade, living in his car. Now, it looks like, oh, yeah, he was always successful.
I thrive on those stories. I know that, yeah.
That's what it takes. Struggle is good.
Oh, it's like the butterfly in the cocoon.
Yeah.
Story is the classic. Yes, if you try to help it along and open the cocoon for it and get it out.
Yeah, your wings will be deformed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, your wings are not deformed. They're fantastic. They're fully formed. Thank you for coming and doing the interview today. It's been long overdue. We've tried a few different times, I know, over the last 3 years, actually. And I'm really excited to go. As soon as we get out of here, I'm like headed to that painting to go see what you've done for the rodeo painting. I can't wait to see it. Yeah, very excited.
That'll be the ultimate.
Oh, I'm sure it'll
test.
Be good. I know it'll be good. I don't know. I know your work. I know I'll love it. Yeah. So it's just a matter of it's a 10 or a. Oh yeah. It's easy. We've known each other, but this is our first real sit down talk, which is, I should have done this 10 years ago, but I didn't. Didn't have a podcast.
I probably was a different person.
Yeah, I was too.
Every decade.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true. 100%.
Changes you. Yeah, we should probably do one, not just you and I. Yeah. Everyone should probably do an inventory every 10 years.
Yeah. Well, it's not bad to do it on a daily basis, quite frankly.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. If you can just do it, just when you get up.
The only sure thing is change.
Yeah, just, review what you're going to do.
Hopefully for the better.
Well, I forget, but I've got a big show opening tonight.
Yes, you
I guess I
do.
better go and see what's going on.
Yes, you do.
So thank you for coming in and spending the time. This is our dealer, that is Lisa Danielle. Go to our website and check out all her great work. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.